Hey, everybody. Happy, my goodness, Tuesday night. And we're going to be together for a month or two. Probably not three. Let's hope not three. Anyways, update. My mom and dad talked to both of them today. They're both in the hospital together. I mean, isn't that amazing? 70 years together. And if you knew my dad, he's like the most stubborn person in the world. So I fully expect him to pull through this. My mom, I'm a little more worried about. Stubborn, no doubt. Smart, beautiful. But she's had pneumonia like 8, 10 times. And we still need your prayers for them. But the coolest thing happened, those of you that listen to me, I talk about, tiny habits, the smallest thing you can do today that will make the biggest difference. And so I start every day. It's on the top of my CEO to-do list. Today is going to be a great day. And then I go, well, why is today going to be a great day? And I was on Dr. Phil today. We did the whole show together, and it was great. It was really fun. And at the end of the day, the tiny habit is what went well today. And so at night before I go to bed, I say a prayer, and often will read from my little book, Stones of Remembrance, which is about scripture, which is actually free for now on Amazon. You can download the Kindle version for free. And then I just let my mind go to what went well today, because it sets up my dreams to be more positive. And, your parents are in the hospital. I worry about my patients, the 8 Amen clinics and our 250 staff. And so there's lots to worry about, but there's also so many amazing things happened. And the most amazing thing happened today, that right after Dr. Phil aired, and I wasn't paying attention because, I filmed it last week, my mom called me, and she called me from the hospital after watching Dr. Phil, and she said that was her best medicine. That was the happiest she has been all week. And that's how I got to visit her today. Because, that's one of the hardest things is, loved ones are sick and you can't go be with them. Or if you are, you have to be super careful. So that's what went well today. I got a call from my mother. Tonight I want to talk about how to stay sober during a pandemic. Addictions have been something we've treated at Amen Clinics for a very long time. And they've been part of my life. I mean, I've never had an addiction except to work. Some people would clearly say I'm addicted to work or writing. I just last night turned in, I think it was my 42nd book. Your Brain is Always Listening. I'm really excited to tell you about it. Not tonight, but coming up soon. But my first wife grew up in a severely abusive alcoholic home. And I got to live with the fallout of the addiction that just devastated her life. And when I realized that, I started studying children and grandchildren of alcoholics. It became a very important part of my professional career, is to understand the impact of addiction on children, and not just children, but also grandchildren. And then Tana, my wife, grew up around drug addiction and the impact on her and her mom and her grandmother was stunning. And then my nieces, Amelie and Alize, I actually dedicated the end of mental illness to them because they grew up with parents who struggled with addiction, and their parents are doing better, and I'm actually very proud of them. And now we're in the middle of a pandemic. And so how do you stay sober in a pandemic? And, I think I am going to tell you a little bit about my new book because I redid the 12 steps. I know that's heresy. Some of you are going to hate me. But the 12 steps were developed in the 1930s. And there's been a little neuroscience that's happened since then. So let me just say, I am a huge fan of 12-step programs. I'm a fan of the structure, of the support, the fact that it's free. But I'm not a fan that they forgot the brain, because the brain is like really important. And so when we think of staying sober during a pandemic, I'm going to give you some tips. I promised you 6. And then I'm going to give you 12 new steps. See what you think. So don't isolate is one of the first things people in addiction recovery programs learn. In uncertain times, such as the coronavirus pandemic, many 12-step programs and support groups and hospitals are canceling their meetings. This leaves one of the most vulnerable segments of our population in a precarious situation. Isolation can lead to feelings of anxiety and depression, often underlying factors that contribute to substance use disorders. Some recovery programs incorporate hugs or hand-holding. That's not happening. 2 things that boost the levels of feel-good chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine. So how do you get virtual hugs? Well, I'm trying to give you a virtual hug right now. Social distancing, critically important during this time, but not virtual distancing. We're doing virtual connecting. So how do you maintain sobriety? 1, find a new way to connect on FaceTime, on text, on video conferencing like Zoom. I like Zoom. We use it at work and find it incredibly helpful. Skype and so on. Use exercise apps and programs. You want to keep sober, you need to exercise, unless you're, of course, you're addicted to exercise. But walking like you're late, 45 minutes, 4 times a week has been shown to decrease depression. It also helps with ADD and anxiety. You have to really focus on your diet. If you eat protein in the morning, you're much more likely to have a balanced blood sugar and make better decisions throughout the day. Did you know that relapse happens when your blood sugar goes low, or when you don't sleep, or you don't really know what you want? So if you're going to make good decisions staying sober, you have to eat healthy food 2-3 times a day. Don't let your blood sugar go low. You're just more likely to relapse in whatever addiction you're trying to beat. Kill the ants. Really important. We're going to talk about that. And if you have underlying mental health issues, get them treated. That's so important. And at this time, Amen clinics were open, all of our clinics open. We're doing a lot of our work virtually just because people can't travel. We see people from 121 countries. And so a lot of it is virtual, but the clinics are open and we're scanning. So your brain is always listening. I talk about the hidden dragons. So the title is Your Brain is Always Listening. The subtitle is Tame the Hidden Dragons That Control Your Happiness, Habits, and Hangups. And hangups is where I talk about a new 12-step program. And whenever I evaluate anybody, I always think of them in 4 big circles. What's their biology like? What's the brain like? What's their psychology? How do they talk to themselves? What's their social circle like? You become like the people you hang out with. The fastest way to get healthy is to find the healthiest person you can stand and then spend as much time around him or her as possible. And there's a spiritual circle, which is why the heck do you care? What is your deepest sense of meaning and purpose? Around the dinner table tonight, I'm like, okay, kids, it's Tana and I, our 2 nieces that are 15 and 10, and Chloe, who's 16. And they sort of knew that April is stay-at-home month. I'm like, so what's everybody's goal? What do you want to accomplish? When you're 65, like I am, days go fast. I'm just shocked at how fast days go. But when you're 10, days go slow. You remember? And so having a plan, having a purpose is critical. So step number 1 in typical 12-step programs is know when your life is out of control. Step number 1 in my program is know what the heck you want. What are your goals? What do you want in your relationships? What do you want for your work? What do you want for your money? What do you want for your physical, emotional, and spiritual health? What do you want? Everything in my mind starts with what's the goal. And then we can get to step 2, is know when you've been taken hostage. Know when your life is out of control. But if you don't know about step 1, how do you know when your life is out of control? So my definition, not mine, I stole it, I'm sure, from someone, but of an addiction is when a substance or a behavior causes trouble in your relationships, with your money, with your work, with your health, or with the law. When a substance or a behavior causes trouble in any of those areas, and you do it again, I think that's the definition of addiction. It's like you don't learn, that despite negative consequences, you still engage in difficult behavior. Not a good idea. And someone says, I only sleep 3 or 4 hours a night, you have to take care of that. So if you get the end of mental illness, there's a whole chapter on sleep. It's absolutely critically important for you making good decisions. So step number 1, know your goal. Step number 2, know when things are out of control. Does your behavior fit? Does the alcohol or the marijuana or pornography or the shopping, the gambling, has it gotten you into trouble with anybody in your relationships, with your money, with your work, with your health, or with the law, and then you can't stop? Your brain's been hijacked. So know when you've been taken hostage. Now, this is new. You won't find it in the 12-step program. It's absolutely essential to staying sober. Love, balance, and repair your brain. Why is the brain not in addiction programs, recovery programs? It's like most of them my sister-in-law got her year chip, and I went to the meeting. I was so excited to go to the meeting with the kids, and they're serving cake. I'm like, oh, great, another addictive substance. Coffee, another addictive substance with fake cream and boatloads of sugar, while people were outside smoking. And I'm just like, how do you get healthy if you don't feed your brain right? And in my book, The End of Mental Illness, if you want to keep your brain healthy or rescue it if it's headed to the dark place, you have to prevent or treat the 11 major risk factors that steal your mind. And we know what they are, and I've talked about them. That's my Bright Minds mnemonic. So that's step number 3. Step number 4, forgive yourself and forgive others. Forgiveness is central. And you'll find that in the 12 steps. I just think it should be early. And there's a method I use from a professor at Virginia Commonwealth University called REACH, for forgiveness. So remember what happened. Empathize with why. I mean, really dig deep on why that happened. A is altruistically give the gift of forgiveness. C is you commit to forgiveness. And H is you hold on to it. Really powerful. In my book, Feel Better Fast and Make It Last, I write a lot about that book, which Dr. Phil's wife, Robin, said really helped her. In that book, I talk about grief. And she lost her sister recently, and she said the portion on grief really helped her. So 4 is forgiveness. 5 is know your brain type. All addicts are not the same. So putting everybody in the 12-step program, when some people are impulsive, other people are compulsive, other people are sad, other people are anxious, other people have had traumatic brain injury, other people are bipolar. It's like, don't put everybody in the same program. I mean, nobody'd ever get the same program for chest pain. So why would we give everybody the same program for addiction? It just doesn't make so much sense. Now, there's a good question. How do you forgive a person that has hurt you so much? And that's hard. Yet when you see it through the lens of the brain, it's easier to forgive people because you realize maybe they're not dealing with a full deck. Maybe they had a head injury, or they've had toxic exposure, or they had something like Lyme disease that ravaged their brain, and that's why they're not acting in helpful ways. The brain imaging work that we do at Amen Clinics, it's just taught me that behavior is way more complicated than most people think, and giving simple answers to complex questions is just not smart. It's just not accurate. So 5 is know your brain type. And then 6 is you have to know the science of cravings, that it's so critical. Your craving monster will get out of control if you haven't slept 6.5, 7 hours a night. You're feeding the craving dragon. If you've not eaten healthy food to keep a balanced blood sugar, if you don't understand the triggers for your negative behavior, I talk to my patients all the time. When are you going to relapse? What? And when they do, I don't shame them, belittle them. I mean, yeah, I'm disappointed because I'm always rooting for them. But I talk to my patients about always being curious about a relapse, not furious. What happened? Why? I had a patient who had bulimia, and she worked really long hours that day and ended up going to a bar without having eaten anything. And she had a margarita, so she didn't have an alcohol problem. But then they ordered nachos and no eating, and the margarita dropped the function of her frontal lobe. And then she ate half the, big plate of nachos and then made herself throw up. And so she came in my office. She was really sad. She felt shame and guilt and told me about throwing up. And I'm like, okay, remember, we talk about curious, not furious. And I had her walk me through that day. And I'm like, so you went to that bar with a really low blood sugar because you hadn't eaten all day. You then ordered alcohol before food, which dropped your frontal lobes further, which made you very vulnerable to overeat and then feel full and then throw up. So the idea is don't go, well, stop throwing up. I mean, that's not smart. To go, we really need to commit to eating 3 or 4 times a day, healthy food to keep a stable blood sugar. And if you're going to have a drink, but you've had no food, you have to say no, because that puts you at risk for relapse. So we're always approach these situations as the scientist, not just the subject. And if you can remember curious, not furious, help you so much. Step number 7. I want you to drip dopamine, not dump it. Now, that could be a whole live chat. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter in our brain that really helps us with motivation, with pleasure, with focus, with energy, with drive. And dopamine's really important. But if you dump it, so examples of dumping dopamine. Some of you know that, Justin Bieber is one of my patients. And fame when you're young, all those girls screaming for you, throwing themselves at you, that dumps dopamine. New love, cocaine, sugar, jumping out of an airplane, scary movies, those are all things that take the dopamine stores you have in your brain and just dump them. You want to drip that, because if you dump dopamine, the problem with it, the more dopamine hits you get, the more it begins to wear out your pleasure centers, and then it takes more and more to feel anything at all. And so we drip dopamine. So if I cuddle Tana in the morning, there's dopamine. If I make the kids breakfast and we clean up the kitchen together and we just chat together, there's dripping dopamine. Pumpkin seeds drip dopamine. L-tyrosine is the amino acid precursor for dopamine. So things like smiles and hugs, and for me doing these live chats, having you guys give me virtual hugs. All of this is really helpful for me. Somebody just posted HALT. Love that. It's another way to make sure you lock up the craving dragon. HALT stands for don't get too hungry. Talked about that. Too angry. We're going to talk about that coming up. Too lonely or too tired. So in HALT, which is an acronym often used, it's got to eat, got to sleep, got to watch your thoughts, and make sure you're connected. So thank you for saying that. Eileen says nothing in excess, which I agree, but don't do everything in moderation, because everything in moderation is the gateway thought to relapse, because it's where you're giving yourself an excuse to cheat. So I'm not a fan of that. Step number 8, you got to eliminate the pusher and user dragons in your life. Know your vulnerable times and just know who's not your friend. I talk about friends versus accomplices. So accomplices help you continue your bad behavior. Friends help you continue the behavior that makes you a better person, that helps you be what you really want in your life. Because quite frankly, no addict I know goes, oh yeah, I'd really like to be an addict and ruin my life and the lives of people I love. just haven't met one. Step number 9 is kill the ants, the automatic negative thoughts. Hang on one second. I have an ant puppet. Showing you the wrong end. Here's the ant puppet. What does ANT stand for? Automatic negative thoughts. The thoughts that come into your mind automatically and ruin your day. And you do not have to believe every stupid thing you think. And so here's the exercise. Whenever you feel sad or mad or nervous or out of control, write down what you're thinking, right? I'm telling you, my parents are in the hospital. They have COVID-19. They're in the high risk group, plus they're 88 and 90. And, the thought is they're going to die. And they may. And at some point, we all die. And we're praying it's not today. But if I just stayed with, oh my God, they're going to die, I'm going to feel sad and awful. But so I always do these 5 questions I learned from my friend Byron Katie. Is it true? I don't know. Is it absolutely true with 100% certainty? Not until it happens. How do I feel when I believe the thought they're going to die? Sad. And did I do everything that I possibly could? And I'm going to feel awful. And 4, who would I be without the thought? I'd still be concerned. They're in the hospital. But I'd be present, and I'd be calling them, and I'd be talking to the doctor and all the things that I'm doing. And the 5th question is take the original thought, they're going to die, and turn it to the opposite. They're not going to die. And then, do I have any evidence that's true? Well, they're actually in the hospital being taken care of by some really smart, caring people, and they're not at home where nobody's going to visit them because they're COVID-19 positive. And so they're in the best place, getting the best care. I can do what I can do. And ultimately, I'm going to read you something before we're done tonight from C.S. Lewis, who's one of my favorite authors ever. He wrote the Chronicles of Narnia and The Great Divorce and the Screwtape Letters, Mere Christianity. Love him. And what he said in 1948, it applies today. All right, kill the ants. And how do you kill the ants? Whenever you feel sad, mad, nervous, or out of control, you have to get your anteater friends to join you. And so you got to kill the ants. Don't believe every stupid thing you think. Whenever you feel sad, write it down. Because when you write it down, you actually get it out of your head. That's not part of the 12-step program, but it totally should be. It's a form of therapy called cognitive behavior therapy. It has manuals and all that. And I'm like, why don't we just kill the ants, the automatic negative thoughts? So that's step 9. Step 10 is get help from those who've tamed their own dragons. And this is the sponsor part of the 12-step program, which I love, which I think is so important, that asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Asking for help is a sign of strength, not weakness. The smartest people I know work with the smartest people they know. I love that. Step number 11 is make amends. Saying you're sorry is so important. So as you forgive yourself, forgive other people as well. Forgiveness and saying sorry is just critical. Now, if you've relapsed 75 times and people just don't believe you're sorry, then you have to demonstrate you say sorry by taking good care of your brain so you can be more consistent. Let's see. Courtney asks, what if someone tells you that they will not be with you for another 2 months? Well, I think virtually, physically that may be true just because, I'm talking to one of my patients today and, their partner's in another state and they're not going to be together, but they totally can be together many moments throughout the day, virtually. And, I thought I was a soldier. So I'm a veteran. I was an infantry medic. I was stationed in Europe. And I went for months without seeing my family or my sweetheart at the time. And it was hard, but time goes. Like 2 months is going to be nothing. And I ask myself this question every day. When it comes to September, am I going to be proud of myself? Am I going to be proud of how I led my family, Amen Clinics and BrainMD, and am I going to be proud of how I acted? Am I going to overreact to the moment, or am I going to be thinking about all of the moments? That's what I want you to do, is think of all of the moments. And then step number 12 is you have to give brain health away. That once you really understand these brain health addiction recovery principles, you have to share it with other people, because it is in the act of giving that you create your own support group, making it more likely you will stay on a path of health, not on a path of illness. So I wrote this down just for you. Actually, I copied it. This is from C.S. Lewis, and it actually wrote it in 1948 when everybody around him was freaked out about the atomic bomb. So where he writes atomic bomb, I'm just going to put in its place COVID-19. In one way, Lewis writes, we think a great deal too much of the atomic bomb. So let's talk COVID-19. In one way, we think a great deal too much about COVID-19. How are we to live in a COVID-19 age? I am tempted to reply, Lewis says, why, as you would have lived in the 16th century, when the plague visited London almost every year, or as you would have lived in a Viking age when raiders from Scandinavia might land and cut your throat any night, or indeed as you already are living in an age of cancer, an age of syphilis, an age of paralysis, an age of air raids, an age of railway accidents, an age of motor accidents, which reminds me of, just a very short time ago, Kobe Bryant was killed in a helicopter crash. I had season tickets to the Lakers for 20 years. I watched his whole career and loved him. And I mean, it's just so sad. And he's not here to be able to, lead his family through this crisis. In other words, Lewis continues, do not let us begin by exaggerating the novelty of our situation. Believe me, dear friends, you and all whom you love were already sentenced to death before the virus attacked. And quite a high percentage of us are going to die in unpleasant ways. We have indeed one very great advantage over our ancestors: anesthetics. We still have that. It is perfectly ridiculous to go about whimpering and drawing long faces because the scientists have added one more chance of painful and premature death to a world which already bristled with such chances, and in which death itself was not a chance at all, but a certainty. This is the first point to be made. And the first action to be taken is to pull ourselves together. If we are going to be destroyed by the virus, let the virus, when it comes, find us doing sensible and human things, praying, working, teaching, reading, listening to music, bathing the children, playing tennis, chatting to our friends, not huddled together like frightened sheep and thinking about the virus. They may break our bodies, but they need not dominate our minds. I'm thinking about you tonight. I'm praying for you. Please pray for my mom and dad. I'll see you soon.